Greetings, classicists, and welcome to Book 18 of the Odyssey, The Beggar in the Palace. So, let's get started straight away with a revolving beggar. That was not supposed to happen. Okay, don't know what happened there at all. Right, there we go. That's what we're supposed to be getting started with, the Book 18 test. So, 10 questions, give yourself 3 or 4 minutes, and then stop and self-mark by reading through the book, looking up the answers, and you need to be getting 70 to 80% to pass and do well as always. So stop the video and have a go at that. Very good. Well done. Right, so let's get stuck into Book 18. And Book 18 has got all sorts of extremely important scenes in, but I think one of the things that you really need to have in the back of your mind at all times, from the point that Odysseus really leaves Eumaeus' hut, is the importance of him concealing his identity and all the various temptations he may have to reveal it. So when you think about his wander into town, where Melanthius, technically a slave of Odysseus, sort of kicked Odysseus in the arse, and Odysseus again had to restrain himself, not kill him, not reveal his identity to Eumaeus or to the world at large. That's one of the real tensions. If Odysseus reveals his identity before he can put his cunning plan into effect, he can die, he can lose everything. And he's come so close. He's come from Troy, he's fought his way through the Cyclops cave, the Lystragonians, dealt with Circe, wandered through the underworld, and so to reveal his identity and be killed by a couple of completely unheroic suitors would be really quite devastating for him. But the tension is constantly there. So let's have a look at Book 18, and it starts with a scene between Odysseus and a beggar who's called Arneus officially, but who's named Irus, I-R-U-S. And this is a slight sort of joke, a play on words if you like, because Irus is the messenger of the suitors, they use him to run errands, whereas Iris is the messenger of the gods. So a kind of play on words, a little Homeric joke for you there. Now, just a little interesting point, but Iris's parents are a little bit mysterious. So his mother is mentioned, but his father is not, implying that Iris is a bastard or an illegitimate child. And again, we see this as just a little example of the importance of lineage and parentage. Without a father, without a known father, without good lineage, Iris is almost destined to a bad life or bad lifestyle. Now, I've put Alcinous, that was a bit stupid on the slideshow. The next question is, what was Antinous' proposal? So when Antinous sees Odysseus and Iris squaring up to each other and appearing to squabble and have even a fist fight over who gets the right to beg for Xenia in the palace, Antinous shows a really appalling understanding of Xenia and hospitality and basic morality, rather than separate the two beggars and say, there's food enough for both of you. Because remember, at the heart of it all, it's not even Antinous' food. Antinous proposes that they have a fight, and the winner gets the selection of the goat paunches that they're cooking, and the loser is thrown out and never allowed to beg again. So another sort of rejection of Xenia. So why is it such an abuse of Xenia? Well, it's not Antinous' food really to give and take. It's not Antinous' place to invite people in and out of the palace that's not his. It's certainly not his place to deny people Xenia, who the owner, who the host, may wish to give Xenia to. So Antinous is really taking great liberties and showing he has no understanding of Xenia. You're supposed to be brought in and fed and watered appropriately rather than made to fight for food. It's also quite a disgusting scene in that here you're dealing with two beggars who are reliant on Xenia for their life, for their very survival, and Antinous is turning this abuse of Xenia into simple entertainment. What's also interesting is the suitors do agree to go along with it, even the more positively portrayed suitors like Amphimenus don't stand in the way and say, Antinous, you can't do this. They all go along with it. I think the fact that Antinous proposes it shows that he really is truly evil, but I think the others can be critiqued for not standing up. So they're about to have this fight, and Athene, of course, intervenes and gives Odysseus muscular thighs, because remember, she has withered him a little bit as well previously with her disguise. So is she making sure that he is back to full strength, or is she giving him more strength, or what's going on there? I don't think it's entirely clear. But anyway, the suitors do notice the power of Odysseus just before the fight, after Athene's intervention. But even so, Odysseus still faces a risk. He could, especially if he shows too great a strength, be viewed as a risk by the suitors. And maybe they just don't like him. Well, we know they don't like him from book 17. And Iris is, after all, their man. So maybe even if Odysseus wins, they'll beat him up or kill him or do whatever. They're a pretty leery bunch. So Odysseus uses a trick which he has used in the past, which is that of the swearing of an oath. So he makes the suitors swear an oath that he won't be harmed in the event of victory and that no one will join in. And that's the condition of him fighting. So the suitors don't really care about this, so they swear the oath, and then Odysseus fights Iris. Now, in this fight, obviously Odysseus, as a true hero fighting a real beggar, hopelessly outclasses Iris. And it's not a question of whether Odysseus wins or not. Odysseus's temptation here is to kill Iris, to take vengeance on one of the many people of a vastly inferior status who have been insulting and humiliating him for the last couple of books. Now, it would be quite natural for a hero to kill anyone who insulted him, let alone an illegitimate beggar. So the temptation to kill Iris would be really quite strong. But as we've spoken about before, Odysseus mustn't kill Iris. He mustn't make it seem like he's any kind of threat to the suitors in reality. So he's tempted, but he doesn't. He refuses because he must conceal his identity until he is in the hall, the suitors are all locked in, and he is the only one with weapons, according to the plan. So Odysseus, as the winner, is allowed to wander around the palace. Again, another tense and humiliating moment for him in a sense that it's his palace, but he has to at least play the game. And he wanders around to all of the suitors, begging and interacting with them. And one of the first suitors that he speaks with is Amphimenus. Now, this is a really interesting minor character, if you like, because it's easy to view the suitors as one whole amorphous mass who all have the same characteristics, who are all a bit like Antinous. But they're not, and this is, for some essays, this is probably a really important thing to take on board. You have some suitors like Amphimenus who seem to be relatively noble. He congratulates Odysseus on his victory and wishes him good luck and good fortune with the rest of his life. Remember earlier on, Amphimenus is the one who says, look, we can't kill Telemachus. We'll pray to the gods and see what they say. And if they say we can kill Telemachus, then we can, but otherwise we mustn't. Which again is seems like quite a low bar for morality, to be honest. But I think it does show an understanding of the nature of divine will and so on and so forth. So he's a reasonably positive character, Amphimenus. He's also the one who Penelope enjoys his company. So there's that little throwaway line where sort of suggests, I don't think that they're having an affair, but perhaps she is a little flirtatious with him, or is actually genuinely looking for someone to marry if Odysseus doesn't come back. So Odysseus interacts with Amphimenus, and Odysseus warns Amphimenus, and I think this is quite an important thing for Odysseus to do when we look at one of the themes of the Odyssey, which is justice and vengeance. Because you can argue that it's not wrong for Amphimenus to come to Ithaca and attempt to win Penelope's hand in marriage if Odysseus is dead. And that's what a lot of people understand the situation to be. It's not completely unreasonable for him to do that. It is unreasonable for him to consume a huge amount of Odysseus's resources and Telemachus's resources, but perhaps you could argue that if he wins, then really he's consuming his own resources, because a lot of them would go to him. I mean, not a great moral argument, but he isn't necessarily truly evil. Having said that, he does take part in some appalling things. He does take part in the devastation of Odysseus' estates for 3 or 4 years. He does, even if he doesn't actually take part in the action of trying to ambush and kill Telemachus, he doesn't stand in the way of it, certainly the first time, although he does on the second time. Remember, when Telemachus gets back, they've already tried to kill him once before. So it's important that Amphinomus is warned, because then vengeance is appropriate. So he's not a blushing innocent. He's been told, you're committing crimes against morality, you're committing crimes against the gods. Odysseus isn't dead, he's on his way back. And so once Amphinomus realizes all of these things, it would then be appropriate for him to leave, and he doesn't. He stays, because he is guilty. Now, why does he stay? Well, Athene is influencing him. Athene is forcing him to stay because she wants vengeance on those suitors. Anyway, how does Odysseus, so jumping back a bit, how does Odysseus warn Amphinomus? Well, he does it in quite a clever way. So he tells another trick and lying tale, another tricky lying tale about his fate and his fortune. And he says, I led a life of looting and violence, and I was a wicked man, and now look what's happened to me. I've suffered grave consequences. I'm now a beggar. So I hope that you leave this place and go to your home. And then he says, I know that Odysseus is alive and on his way back. And remember, once it's become clear that Odysseus is alive and on his way back, then the whole suiting thing, the whole pillaging of estates, all that stuff has got to stop instantly, because then it's a crystal clear example of theft and a reduction in time and all those sorts of things. But remember, Antinous doesn't listen. Does he, Meme? No, he doesn't. So, did I say Antinous? I meant Amphinomus with that last one. Oh, sorry. Nightmare. Long day. Anyway, on to the next scene, and that's a very interesting scene of Penelope. And Penelope is a character who's going to grow and grow in importance, and perhaps our understanding of Penelope will grow, or perhaps not. She is a truly mysterious, ambiguous character. Anyway, stop the video and have a look at about lines 170 lines 270, where we have a scene involving Penelope. And what I would like to do is answer the following question with a little bullet point quote and an explanation of why that quote is a useful answer. And the question is, how does this scene characterize Penelope? So this isn't a literary question, wouldn't be precisely along these lines, but it's good to think of it in those veins. So a little point, a little bit of an explanation. How does the scene on 172 to 270 characterize Penelope? So stop the video and have a go at that. Did you stop? I'm sure you did. Excellent. Well done. So what have we got? Well, we've got Penelope characterized as a worthy individual. Athene spends time on her. She gives her wisdom and gifts. So she gives her wisdom and inspires her to seek gifts from the suitors, so increasing Penelope's time and Odysseus's time. She gives her beauty as well. She gives her an ointment that is really the ointment of Aphrodite. So Penelope becomes stunningly beautiful and sexually attractive. And remember, this is a sort of thing that Athene does to Odysseus all the time. She makes him taller and broader, and his hair becomes curlier and blacker, and she intervenes with Odysseus to make him more handsome. And here we see her intervening with Penelope to make her more beautiful. So we can assume that she's worthy of the gods. Now, a slight counter argument to that could be, to what extent is Athene actually doing this for Odysseus's benefit rather than the worthiness of Penelope particularly. So yeah, it's worth considering. On the other hand, Penelope is a very noble woman. She is chaste, like Athene, although chaste in a different way. She's extremely cunning, like Athene, and she's extremely beautiful, like Athene. So I think Athene is certainly keen on Penelope as well. So I think it is a worthiness as well as for the benefit of Odysseus that she's intervening. She detests the suitors, and it's interesting that Telemachus never quite seems to understand the true feelings of his mother. She absolutely loathes the suitors. Now she realizes she may have to marry one, so she's playing a very dangerous, complex game, but she clearly doesn't like them. She warns them, she tells them to get lost, she tells them to leave, and they don't. So she is actually trying to get rid of them. Telemachus often seems to imply that she's sort of flirting with them a little bit and not dismissing them and telling them to go away and so on. Whereas we do see Penelope say to the suitors, leave, and they don't. And the extraction of gifts from them is a great demonstration of her cunning. She's very similar to Odysseus in that sense. Now, what else? She's very modest. When she appears before the suitors, she makes sure that there are maids with her as chaperones. She's determined to preserve her chastity and her reputation. This is especially important given that Odysseus is away, or rather she thinks Odysseus is away. There can't be any situations in which Penelope's chastity is called into question, and she acts appropriately here. She brings maids along her when she's going to see the suitors. She then says, in a sort of really kind of sad little scene, she says that her identity and beauty is dependent on Odysseus. So fundamentally, without Odysseus, she is nothing. Her beauty is meaningless. Her identity is meaningless. It's all completely dependent on Odysseus being there and being head of the oikos, head of the household, and her husband. So truly, she is loyal and in love with Odysseus. We then see her seemingly being probably a little bit cunning, because she tells Eurymachus, the second most evil, powerful suitor, if you like, that Odysseus told her a story about when she could remarry. So she needs to stay faithful and loyal to Odysseus until Telemachus starts growing a beard, and if Odysseus still isn't back, then she's allowed to remarry. And Telemachus has presumably grown some kind of beard. I bet it's a sort of scraggly, really crap beard with patches and bits missing. But anyway, he's probably grown some kind of beard at this point. And so Penelope is really saying with this speech, I'm thinking of remarriage and the time is getting close. And I think what she's doing with this speech to Eurymachus is encouraging him and luring him on in order to receive excellent gifts. Because the thing she does next is obviously say to the suitors, I need gifts as a sign of your commitment. So Eurymachus is there thinking, oh God, she's ready, she's ready to crack, she's ready to give in, and I need to provide the most amazing gift possible. So then she chooses me. So I think Penelope is probably lying about the Telemachus's beard story. I think she's using that to extract more from the suitors. So she's truly cunning in a very similar vein to Odysseus. As always with Penelope, though, bear it in mind, you can read it all just as it's written. That was a story that Odysseus told her. That Telemachus has finally started growing some kind of pathetic semblance of a beard, and she is choosing to, or has decided to remarry a suitor as much as she loathes them. It seems to me to be just too much of a simple reading of Penelope, especially when we look at the complexity of characters in the Odyssey and how they never tell the truth, and how Odysseus is a trickster, and how Penelope is known for her intelligence. So when you add all those together, it seems like there must be more going on, but you can read it in that way if you so choose. So we then get an interesting scene with Odysseus in the palace and Melantho, who is another one of Odysseus's serving staff, who abuses Odysseus, like Melanthius, her brother. Now, here we're told that Melantho is in love with Eurymachus. They're having a passionate affair, and this is wrong in for a whole variety of reasons. So Melantho isn't free to make those kinds of decisions, and she seems to be doing that. She is acting beyond her station as fundamentally a slave / servant, and we see Eumaeus doing the opposite. Eumaeus has not married because Odysseus hasn't been there to grant him permission, whereas Melantho is having an affair with a suitor and doesn't really care. The reason why this is such a bad thing, obviously beyond sort of the sexual morality of the time, is that the suitors are clearly an enemy of the oikos. If she was having an affair with a friend of the household, might that be better? Yes, better, I think. Still inappropriate, but better. But she is sleeping with someone who is trying to bring about the destruction of Odysseus' oikos and household, which is completely unacceptable, especially given Penelope brought her up. So Penelope had Melantho on her lap, and fed her little bits of meat. Brought her up as her own child. So it's a complete betrayal of the oikos and Penelope in particular. So it's so significant that she insults Odysseus, really because of those reasons. She has been brought up by the household, looked after by the household. She has betrayed the household by sleeping with Eurymachus, and by insulting Odysseus, she is not acknowledging the ability of the household to grant Xenia either. So Penelope has said, "Come in and welcome this beggar," and Melantho is trying to get rid of him. So she's breaking all the rules, regulations, morals, and everything else. So how does Melantho compare to Melanthius? Well, very similar, ever so slightly different. They both attempt to deny Xenia to Odysseus. They both show that they are breaking the rules and laws and desires of the oikos that they're supposed to serve. They're both in league with the suitors. They're both rude, and they were both brought up by Odysseus and his family and owe them a sort of moral debt, if nothing else. So I guess the difference is the physical threat. Melantho doesn't physically abuse Odysseus, whereas Melanthius does. So moving on. What I would like you to do now is have a look at the worksheet of quotes by a scholar called Bassett. And Bassett's produced a list of quotes, and what I would like you to do is basically follow the instructions on the sheet. What do you think of his argument? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? And what evidence are you using to support or challenge your opinion? And these are really important skills to get to grips with, because when you write 30-mark essays, which are 45 minutes long, you need to have 2, ideally 3 quotes from scholars, and you need to analyse them. And the way you analyse them is you explain why you agree with them or disagree with them, and you need to give evidence as to why your opinion is more valid. So have a look at the sheet and complete it as designed. It should be relatively simple and easy to understand. Obviously, if it's not, then by all means do send me a message over Teams. Good. Okay, so that is basically that. Take care, and I will see you next lesson.